they doubt the kid. I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, to hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step. I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets. Cause we know who we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. Tell 'em I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
The embarrassments. The embarrassments. The Trump administration and Don himself, the embarrassments he is suffering right now has really motivated me. I mean, this, last week I said we're taking wins. We're taking wins. Yes, there's been some losses. Yes, it's a bumpy road. But when you think about where we were after Trump got his second election victory and became president for the second time, and his executive orders started rolling out, and we saw Project 2025 come to fruition, there was definitely it wasn't really said as much as it was felt, I think, this overwhelming feeling, at least for me and some people I knew, that, oh man, like this is a one-way ticket to authoritarianism. And now that he's been put in this position of power and is able to, put all of his sycophants in all the right places to make sure he is undeterred in his mission. There was this overwhelming sense of dread and just like it wasn't if, it was when Trump's dreams of unitary power come to fruition. It wasn't really if, it was then, when. There was this feeling of dread, and I'm telling you, it's starting to clear up. The fog, the clouds, the dark clouds are starting to clear up a little bit as we start to take victories. And Trump gets embarrassed, and the country takes notice. And, when Trump was elected in the first term, I think something like 37% of Republicans who voted for Trump identified as MAGA. That number's down to around 27 or 28% now. They're peeling off. He's affecting his supporters' lives, and he is getting embarrassed on a national stage. We get embarrassed on a global stage, which was one of my biggest fears of a whole Trump presidency the first time, was, oh my God, globally, we look like jackasses. This dude, he's the worst. All he does is lie and spin and riff and, disjointed. I was just really sad for us on a global stage, but nationally, it is all unraveling for him. We'll see what happens with the ACA. We'll see what kind of corner the Democrats can paint the Republicans into. We'll see about that. The Epstein thing is chugging along. The victims spoke again today. Very powerful. We're going to have a vote on the discharge petition, on releasing all of the Epstein files in the House today. We're there. When we started this show, that discharge petition was just being presented, and here we are. How time flies. Ms. Grijalva signed the 218th signature. Trump and Johnson, realizing they were about to be pushed into the pool, jumped in themselves. Trump does a 180, says, let's just release it and get it over with. Johnson says, I'll push up the vote, and here we are. Here we are. But don't forget, I mentioned yesterday, if Trump orders an investigation into those 20,000 emails and an investigation into the Democrats mentioned on them, well, these files are now part of an ongoing investigation. Can't release them then. Keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on that. Other embarrassments. The DOJ. We're gonna call this first segment and a half, 2 segments, Lindsay Halligan's going to get fired. That is the theme of the next couple segments. This is beautiful, the way this is unraveling in front of all of us. It's just so delicious. It's so chef's kiss. It's really delicious. It's getting worse and worse and worse for Halligan. Halligan has become the main focus of the defense lawyers dismissing this case. Comey's lawyers and Abe Lowell, who we're going to talk a lot about today. Abe Lowell, who is Letitia James's lawyer and Lisa Cook's lawyer. Ann Bolton has gone to him for services. Somebody else as well. He's the busiest lawyer in Washington. And Lowell and Comey's lawyers, they are absolutely tearing the prosecution's case apart. It's not even going to get to trial. They are tearing Halligan apart. At first, it seemed like the stronger motion to dismiss was going to come from the weaponization of the DOJ at the president's behest, because that seems so cut and dry and so obvious to prove, especially with all of the Truth Social tweets and Truth Social posts that Trump has made, including "they are guilty, arrest them now," all that stuff. That seemed like the more ironclad motion, right? It's this Halligan thing has completely unraveled. We have talked about her illegitimacy at the position. We've talked about that. We're not going to focus on that today. That's a different lawyer. That's a different judge deciding that. That's Judge Curie. That's Magistrate Judge Curie deciding, does that motion to dismiss on that basis have merit, that she shouldn't have been there to bring the grand jury indictment. That's another judge and other arguments. We're focused on Magistrate Judge William Patrick. Don't forget, Nachmanoff, Judge Nachmanoff is the judge overseeing the trial. The magistrate judges they're reviewing these motions, and William Fitzpatrick is reviewing Halligan's presentation and acquiring of the grand jury indictment. That is what he is focused on, and it does not look good for the prosecution, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. There have been fundamental mistakes made by Miss Halligan. Fundamental mistakes. A lot of them surround mistakes she made because she had to present this herself. Why did she have to present these grand jury indictments herself? Because lawyer after lawyer quit because they wanted no part of this. After Eric Siebert, the former interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, said there's no there, and either could not or would not bring this grand jury indictment, he had to go. And in comes Miss Halligan. And she couldn't get anybody to present this with her because everybody's quitting. Nobody wants a piece of this. She had to do it by herself. Judge Fitzpatrick wrote and said a lot of things. He said the court is finding that the government's action in this case, whether purposeful, reckless, or negligent, raised genuine issues of misconduct and are extricably linked to the government's grand jury presentation and deserve to be fully explored by the defense. So what did he do? He ordered that all of the prosecution's evidence and findings be handed over to the defense so they can really go through it with a fine-tooth comb. We're talking about the grand jury evidence presented to the grand jury, right? The indictment evidence presented to the grand jury, that is extremely rare. That almost never happens, that the defense gets to take a look at the grand jury transcripts in the acquisition of this indictment. It almost never happens. The judge ordered it. Hand everything over to the defense and let them really go through it. Let them really, really go through it. Now, after he said that, the prosecution's lawyers, they wanted to file an emergency request to deny that. They called it contrary to the law. And they raised objections. And they want Judge Nachmanoff to overrule this magistrate judge and not allow this. We'll see how that goes. I doubt it'll go well for the defense, considering what Fitzpatrick has laid out before us. The mistakes. Let's go through the big mistakes. The mistakes that are going to make Comey walk away from these charges. And don't forget, when he walks away from these, and I'm telling you right now he will, when he walks away from these, they can't bring these charges again. Don't forget the statute of limitations. That's why Lindsay Halligan had to rush it. That's why she had to rush it by herself, because the statute of limitations was going to run up on his testimony to the Senate, which is one of the charges. All right. First, she said that Comey did not have the Fifth Amendment right to not testify in this trial. Okay? This is what she said during her presentation. One of the things she said during her presentation to the grand jury. She said that Comey will have to take the stand. He cannot invoke the Fifth Amendment in this matter. That is not correct. That is not correct at all. That is flat out wrong. You see, in the United States, according to our law, you are innocent until proven guilty. You don't go in front of a jury. You don't have to go in front of a jury and convince them you're innocent. It is up to the prosecutors to prove to that jury that you are guilty. That's how it works here in this United States right now, as of right now, for now. That's how it works. He absolutely has the Fifth Amendment right to not take the stand. She presented it completely inaccurately to the grand jury. That's mistake number one. Mistake number one. She also told the jury, get this, she told the jury that they did not have to solely rely on the record and evidence that she had presented here today, and that they could be assured that the government had more evidence, better evidence, that they will present at trial. So basically, she's telling the grand jury, you can assume we'll get there by trial. Even though you may not find enough here in what I've presented today, go ahead and assume that I will have enough to present at trial to convict. She's not allowed to say that. She's not allowed to have the jury assume she has better evidence. She is a hack. She's a hack. Eric Siebert was a tenured professional with integrity. He couldn't get this job done. He wasn't the right guy for the job. Halligan, she's the one for the job. She's a hack with no integrity, has no idea what she's doing, which could have been mitigated if she was surrounded by line prosecutors with experience. They could have stopped these missteps, presented it constitutionally. She was all alone. And she's a hack. Not a good combo. Not a good combo. Also, she originally had 3 charges she wanted to present to the grand jury. She had 3. She had facilitating confidential, classified information through a whistleblower, and lying to the Senate. Right? There was a 3rd, and the grand jury rejected that 3rd. But the one that they rejected, she presented it first. They rejected it, and the judge says, you completely botched the paring down or narrowing down to the 2 sole counts, the 2 sole charges. She didn't do it right. And another portion of missing transcript. The part where she then presented the 2 charge indictments, that was all missing from the transcripts. So we've got the later 2 hours missing when she said they were deliberating, and the 2 hours missing of her presenting the 2 charges that she got the indictment on. The judge is not happy.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett breaks things because someone has to.
Halligan's going to get fired. So 1, she tells the grand jury that Comey won't be able to invoke the Fifth Amendment and he'll have to take the stand. That was wrong. She said to the jurors, don't go just by what I've presented here today. Don't go just by the evidence that I've given you. You can assume there's better evidence. You can come back with an indictment because you should be rest assured that I have better evidence waiting for trial. That's illegal. After the jurors dismissed her first charge, she mispresented the next 2. And the transcripts of this, her presenting, the paring down, her presenting of the next 2 charges, they're missing from the transcripts. Missing. Judge said, this unusual series of events, still not fully explained by the prosecutor's declaration, calls into question the presumption of regularity generally associated with grand jury proceedings and provides another genuine issue the defense may raise to challenge the manner in which the government obtained the indictment. It gets worse. It gets worse. There was an FBI agent who was the sole witness to take the stand during the grand jury indictment. He testified. Turns out A lot of his testimony was actually, it should have been attorney-client privilege, some of the stuff he testified to. It was inadvertently disclosed information that should never have been revealed. The defense attorneys find out afterwards, after they get the transcripts, the part of the transcripts that were actually there. Once they got their hands on it and they took a look at this FBI agent's testimony, they said, oh, wait a second. This, and this were all attorney-client privilege. He should have never been able to reveal that to the grand jury. It gets worse. Halligan's going to get fired. It gets worse. Okay, so Daniel Richman, we've talked about him. He's right in the center of this case. He's right in the center of it. Richman briefly served as Comey's attorney after Trump fired him in 2017. Okay. And the prosecutors are saying that Richman was the anonymous source that leaked classified information to the media on Comey's behest. Okay. That's a lot of what this case centers around. They're saying Comey gave classified information to Richman, his lawyer, and then Richman, as an anonymous source for the media, disclosed that information. The other part of the charge is Comey lied about that to Ted Cruz in a Senate hearing. Those are the two charges. Now, here's the problem. All of Richman's evidence, all the evidence they acquired around Richman, most of it was communication devices, and all of it was acquired in 2019 and 2020. That was part of an FBI investigation then. And they came up with no charges. They closed that investigation. That 2019-ish investigation by the FBI into Daniel Richman disclosing classified information, it ended without charges. So Halligan's team, they come in behind that investigation and they start pouring through the evidence of that 2019 investigation into Richmond. They didn't go do their own homework. They didn't go get their own evidence. They went and they just grabbed the evidence acquired from that 2019 investigation. Okay. And that evidence became the cornerstone of their case. Well, prosecutors must obtain new search warrants to review material seized as part of a prior investigation. They got to get a warrant for that. They can't just say, thanks, yoinks, and start pouring through. They have to get a warrant. And it turns out this was one of the reasons they couldn't do much with the 2019 investigation, is a lot of what they uncovered in that evidence was attorney-client privilege. Like I said, in 2017, Comey hired Richman as his lawyer, and much of what they obtained in that investigation was attorney-client privilege. Well, guess what Halligan and her team did? Used it as part of the evidence to acquire this grand jury indictment. So they used attorney-client privileged evidence, and they didn't go and get warrants for the evidence they did use. I mean, that's strike 4 and 5, 5 and 6. She's getting fired. She's getting fired. And it's going to be delicious. Quote, the judge wrote, "This cavalier attitude toward a basic tenet of the Fourth Amendment and multiple court orders left the government unchecked to rummage through all the information seized from Mr. Richman, and apparently, in the government eyes, to do so again anytime they choose." She really screwed this up. Really screwed this up. You can say all you want, and you can theorize all you want, and I do, and Scott does. You can theorize all you want that Eric Siebert, too much integrity, too much of a professional. Lindsay Halligan, lapdog, weaponized insurance lawyer who will do whatever the president says. That part for sure. Did they know that Lindsay was going to screw it up this bad? Did they greenlight seeking these grand jury indictments, knowing full well how precarious it was, not only to have Lindsay Halligan present the evidence and seek the indictment, but how precarious it was that there was no line prosecutors assisting her, all by her lonesome. All by her lonesome. Was that Pam Bondi's intention? Was that Todd Blanche's intention? Was it Trump's intention? Now, I had said to Scotty, I feel like there's no way Bondi and Blanche signed off on something this weak, this terrible. There's no way they could have known how unequipped Lindsay Halligan was to do this. Could they have known? I say no. I think they got pressure from Don to get this indictment, to get him thrown in jail, to get him, in handcuffs, whatever he has to do. And I think Pam Bondi took those orders from Donald Trump and applied that pressure to the Eastern District of Virginia. First to Eric Siebert, who couldn't get it done, so he had to go. They bring in Lindsay Halligan because she'll do whatever, and she ran with it. And I'm not sure how much of a disaster Pam Bondi knew this was going to be. Scott has another theory. He's going with the Ed Martin quotes, the weaponization czar, and what he said, which is, look, the evidence isn't the point. The evidence isn't the point. It's the embarrassment. It's the vilification. It's dragging their name through the mud, making them spend millions in lawyers' fees, and destroying their reputation, destroying their public image, ruining their lives. The evidence isn't the point. Getting a conviction isn't the point. And has that been the philosophy surrounding all of this? And Lindsay Halligan, and he is definitely in on, Lindsay Halligan was the patsy on this. Which Scott's, he's almost there to convincing me that she was just a patsy. That Pam Bondi, she being the professional. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I think 100% that they found her because, they obviously had her, but that's why they hired her with no trial experience. That's why that everybody along the way has been saying how misguided and how uninformed she is and all this stuff. They found somebody that was like, okay, I'll do this, and she lined up perfectly, and now she's being hung out to dry.
So I'm going with they went and got her because she won't get hung up with any of the unprofessionalism attached to this indictment. Scott's saying they knew damn well this was going to be a bleep show. Yeah.
Pam Bondi's not that stupid.
Right.
She knew going in that this was not going to work, so they just needed somebody to tie it up in court. Obviously, what's his name wasn't able to.
Right.
Siebert or he didn't want to. I shouldn't say.
Didn't want to.
He didn't.
Couldn't or wouldn't. Yep.
Couldn't or wouldn't. So they found somebody that would be more than willing to do whatever the dear leader says.
Yeah. So they found somebody that would but can't. They found somebody that would but can't. You're convincing me, Scotty. You're convincing me. Now, Ty Cobb said a few things. I want you to hear from former White House lawyer Ty Cobb, because he said some really good stuff here. And then we haven't heard from Comey recently, and I want you to hear from Comey. Ty Cobb says the case against FBI Director James Comey is dead. And it's all because of Lindsay Halligan. That's what Ty Cobb's saying now. I think it's dead for two reasons. First, I think it's dead because of the illegal appointment that is before another judge, Judge Curie, we talked about it, but because the magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick's opinion today will be taught in law schools for 50 years as the epitome of prosecutorial misconduct. Yikes. I'm out here saying Lindsay's getting fired. Ty's out here saying she's going to be the historic example of how not to be a lawyer. Woo, okay. All right, Ty. He said Halligan is to blame because of her errors. Her time in the grand jury is extraordinary. She told the grand jury basically that Comey didn't have a Fifth Amendment right at trial to refuse to testify, and therefore he would be able to give his explanation as to the events and counter the government's evidence, which the judge noted appropriately was burden shifting. That's exactly what it is, burden shifting, and it is not constitutional. Cobb went on, and moreover, she told the grand jury in an extraordinary statement not to worry about the record with which they have been presented because the government had better evidence at trial. That's like saying, please indict this person because we don't have time to indict innocent people. It's just way, way, way out of bounds. Right. He's saying that the AG is saying Well, you can trust this is a good case. You can trust these charges are ironclad because we don't have time to do this with innocent people. We only have time and resources to do this with people who are definitely guilty. So you can assume he's guilty. So give us our indictment. Go ahead. What did Comey say? He said, my family and I have known for years there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump. But we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. He's addressing you, the American people. He continues to address you, the American people. He says, somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant. And she's right. That actually is a quote from his daughter, right? She's suing the DOJ, right? Trump and Bondi are all named in the lawsuit for her firing in the Southern District of New York. And that is one thing she said. He quotes her. I love it. Quotes his daughter, Maureen. I love that. Love that action. He said, but I'm not afraid. And I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged. You are paying attention. And you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it. Which it does. Way to cut right to the chase, James. God, I hope this embarrassment does last till the midterms. What a black eye for the DOJ and Trump. It's beautiful.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things, pushing back, speaking up, and holding the line.
So, just to put a bow on, DOJ embarrassment, Trump embarrassment, it's soon to be Bill Holt embarrassment. He's the one who referred these investigations to the DOJ. He's the one. He referred the Cook, referred the James, referred the Comey, referred the Swalwell. He referred all of these investigations. Stepping over Joe John Allen. Remember that? Joe John Allen, who himself stepped down, tired of getting stepped over. It's going to get embarrassing for Bill Holt. Now, just to put a bow on this, how he collected that information using his lackey in Fannie Mae, one of the lower officials in that company, right, to unlawfully obtain some of this mortgage details. There was an investigation out of Fannie Mae, right? The Fannie Mae whistleblower said, hey, there's a problem here. Then the Fannie Mae investigators went to work. Then they referred it to Joe John Allen, who as his final act referred it to the DOJ. And when Bill Holt caught wind of all of this, he fired everybody. Joe John Allen stepped down. No investigation happened in the DOJ. Well, now Elizabeth Warren is calling into a new investigation. She's calling for a new investigation from the Government Accountability Office. And by the way, the Government Accountability Office is a separate bipartisan watchdog group within the government that is not beholden to President Trump. She wants an investigation into Bill Holt. Why? We talked about weeks ago that the U.S. Code forbids the DOJ to have evidence against a group of people, let's say of mortgage fraud, and only pursue charges against one section of those people, the president's enemies. You can't just go after the president's enemies and ignore the malfeasance of the president's allies, like Scott Bessent and Sean Duffy, who have done exactly what he is accusing Cook, James, Swalwell, and Comey of doing. Warren wants an investigation. This could get ugly for Bill Holt. He already embarrassed the president over his 50-year mortgage plan, which dumb Donnie went and ran with before anybody got a chance to stop him. Bill Holt's going to get fired along with Lindsey Halligan. We had a big visit today. Going on right now. You'd swear this was a visit from one of our greatest allies, one of the greatest leaders in the world. You would swear this is a visit by somebody who is revered, not just here in America, but globally. Why else would America roll out such a red carpet for this individual? This individual is getting aligning Lafayette Square in Washington, which is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Went there with my wife earlier this year. It was absolutely gorgeous. Lining Lafayette Street is the United States flag next to this dignitary's home country's flag all the way down Lafayette. What a display. Also, a military flyover for this person. What great paragon of global stability, justice, and, positive relationships could this possibly be? It's MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. Oh, you got something for me here, Scotty? There we go. There he is. There's this great man meeting with Trump, laughing it up. Oh, look at that. MBS. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Saudi Arabia was the first visit Trump made during his first presidency. Not Canada, not Mexico, not the United Kingdom, which is common for a U.S. president. And his first visit to a foreign country? Nope. Saudi Arabia was his first visit. Bonus round. Guess who his first visit was to once he got elected this time around? Ding, 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 ding. Saudi Arabia. Well done. You all did very, very well on that round. Oh, yeah. They got a very close relationship. And MBS is here at the White House. Now, I don't have to tell, Randy's audience that is held over to me, and thank you for that. And I'm going to run through this real quickly for some of my new members who have picked me up since I began, in case they don't already know. Among other things, including the bombing in Yemen's civil war, two major black eyes for Saudi Arabia. I mean, we can talk about the human rights abuses. We can talk about that they are constantly leading the world year in and year out in executions. We can talk about the jailing and the disappearing of political activists, journalists, and political enemies of the Crown Prince's family. We can talk about a lot of that. We can talk about the fact that the military and the police are one and the same. There's a lot we could talk about. The absolute disgusting human rights violations against women and their history, long history with that. We could talk about that, but I want to mention one. They killed Jamal Khashoggi. Okay? The evidence was looked into, and the determination was made that when Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi Arabian embassy, they made sure he did not walk back out. He met a very disturbing end at the hands of the Saudi Arabian security and MBS. His orders is what it was found. 2, this I certainly don't have to remind Randy's audience. Right around 2017, once Trump took office, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, with access to high-level, classified, and sensitive information about their global allies and enemies, went to meet with Mohammed bin Salman, MBS. It is theorized and has been reported that at that meeting, he told MBS everything he had on the royal family, his political enemies, and the power plays that they had in the works. Threats to his power. Kushner briefed him. Shortly after that, MBS held his family hostage in a dramatic power play, literally hostage, in a hotel. Some people were eliminated. Some people were silenced. Everybody got in line. And MBS was the undisputed king of Saudi Arabia going forward. He was the leader after that. And shortly after that hostage taking, Kushner's company gets a $3 billion deposit by MBS. Okay. Now that we've reminded everybody of that, here he is, like some kind of example of global friendship, partnership, and justice and leadership, meeting with our president in this disgusting, gaudy, gold-covered Oval Office, the ugliest chairs I've ever seen in my life. Here he is meeting with our president. And they got a lot to talk about. They're going to talk about a few things. They're going to talk about a weapons sale. A jet sale and future weapon sales. They're going to talk about some other deals. We'll get into those deals. We'll get into it, what they're going to talk about. But apparently what they're not going to talk about is normalizing Saudi Arabia's relationship with Israel, which everybody but Trump, seems to be interested in. Democrats, Republicans, people in his administration, and Israeli officials, they all want Trump to at least discuss with MBS the possibility of normalizing the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Apparently, Don's not interested in that. He wants to sell them jets. And I'll tell you right now, Saudi Arabia has been desperately trying to rehabilitate its image since the Khashoggi killing. They have been leading up to this, leading up to a giant jet sale. Lockheed Martin, they cash out. They're the ones that make this jet. And there's the opposition to this is multifaceted. They're going to talk about other things like a generational AI sharing, intelligence sharing deal, some other stuff. All of this is MBS has cultivated carefully Saudi Arabia's image leading up to this to make this possible. Since the Khashoggi killing, they have sidelined many of the powerful clerics that had embedded themselves into the governmental aspects of Saudi Arabia. They've sidelined them, kind of silenced them a little bit, shoved them aside. I don't know the politics of that in his country, but that's what he's been doing. He's also been trying to clean up his image as far as women go. They've been allowing women in the workforce a little bit more. Less, beheadings of women that they have deemed to have committed some crime or another, because that's what they were doing, beating, beheading women. He's trying to slow that down a little bit, trying to integrate women into their society a little bit more, a little more fairly. He's also been going hard at the sports washing. And I know a lot of you guys know about that. Their relationship with the WWE, Live Golf, Mr. Beast. We're going to do a deep dive into that, by the way, as this comes to fruition and gets a chance to breathe a little bit. We've already done a ton of great research on their sports washing alone. But the sports washing effort by Saudi Arabia is considerable and has been a multi-billion-dollar effort. Okay? And now Trump's here ready to meet him, smile with him, shake his hand. He's not the only president who has turned a blind eye to Saudi Arabia's human rights violations and their violent past. When Joe Biden was running for president in 2019, he said he was going to treat Saudi Arabia like a pariah. He cited their human rights violations, their relationship with terrorist organizations, the way they do their business. He said he was going to treat them as a pariah. But as soon as the war in Ukraine broke out, all of a sudden, he was negotiating with MBS because oil prices had spiked. It was a big emergency. Oil prices needed to be normalized, and he went to MBS to help do that. And then, later on in 2022, he's giving him a fist bump. In a meeting they had in Saudi Arabia. He gave him a fist bump, smiled at him. Human rights activists were absolutely incensed about this. So the guy wields power, influence. It seems to be undeniable. Biden went so far as to try to take his newfound relationship with MBS to the table, to the negotiating table, and get a defense pact, and normalize Saudi Arabian and Israeli relationships, get them to the table and sign something, put something in writing to, turn a page and begin a new friendship between the countries. And as soon as October 7th, 2023 happened, that kiboshed that entire effort. But he tried to get there. And here we are. Now, Biden took what had been seen as a normalization, in part, between Washington and Riyadh, and tried to parlay it into some peace in the Middle East, tried to parlay it into some peace for the Gazan people, for the Palestinians. Trump He takes this normalized Saudi-U.S. relationship and he cashes out. Jet sales, talking about swap of intelligence on AI. He tries to cash out. And he apparently isn't willing to talk about normalizing Saudi and Israeli relationship. He doesn't want to talk about that. Biden wanted to bring him to the table, get something signed. Trump doesn't want to mention it. Now, the meeting is still going on, and a gaggle has began. And I want to see what happens when one of the reporters asks him about that specifically.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, You're listening to Brett Breaks Things, pushing back, speaking up, and holding the line.
Okay, let's get to the down and dirty, right? Because that's what I love to delve in. I'm like a pig. I want to get down in the slop and roll around in it. And I want to splash it all over you as you stand back and enjoy. Here's the down and dirty. First, this jet sale. This is an F-35. It's an F-35 fighter jet. It's got very advanced technology embedded into this jet. Extremely advanced. We're talking leading edge in the world. Stealth technology among other advancements in this F-35. Trump says of the sale, we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35s. We want to buy them. They've been a great ally. Oh, and by the way, that great ally just sat there and said he knew nothing about Khashoggi's murder. That's what MBS just said on TV with the cameras rolling and audio equipment working. He said, I knew nothing about Khashoggi's murder. Okay. You see why they're such great friends? They're willing to sit there on the grandest stage and lie to your face. No problem. Nope. And Trump got mad because the reporters embarrassed his friend, his guest. Yeah. All right. So Trump's going to sell these jets. 48 jets he's going to buy. This guy. Oh, and by the way, along with these jets, Trump's talking a defense pact. A defense pact. You getting deja vu? Yeah, we just signed one of these with Qatar. Remember a few weeks ago? Trump signed a defense pact with Qatar. A defense pact that he's willing to back out of from NATO. That he says maybe he will, maybe he won't. Honor the pacts he's made with NATO, but he's out here making defense pacts with Qatar. He's going to get us into war. And now he's talking about a defense pact with Saudi Arabia. That is one of the things they discuss. A defense pact. Here we go again. But Saudi Arabia is going to buy 48 of our F-35s. All right, now Lockheed Martin's the one that's going to cash out on this. Lockheed Martin. They have sold around 150 to 190 of these. Okay? 20 countries have either ordered or already have the planes. And each plane costs anywhere between $80 and $110 million each. Oof. It's a pretty penny. Here's the problem. Just with the sale. There's a problem with all of this. But with the sale in particular, here's the problem. One, Saudi Arabia, they have a security alliance with China. They share military technology, intelligence. They have a very close relationship. Beijing and Riyadh have had and enjoy now a very close relationship. Republicans and Democrats both are saying, whoa, with this sale. You're going to give all of this highly sensitive, cutting-edge military technology to the Saudi Arabians who are going to immediately share it with China. What are you doing? Don doesn't care. Don doesn't care. This is a relationship that he has fostered for years. We're going to get into that. This is his buddy, his ally. Don doesn't care if Republicans and Democrats both want this to not happen. He doesn't care. Also, Republicans and Democrats alike have said that if you give this jet to Saudi Arabia, you are taking away Israel's military edge in the region. This is one of the reasons Israel has been able to stand strong amidst so many enemies, is because they have a military advantage afforded to them by us. And one of those advantages is the F-35. And if you give it to Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, is not willing to discuss normalizing their relationship with Israel, and Trump's not willing to bring it up, you give it to Saudi Arabia, you take away Israel's edge, who knows where this could lead? Along with in China. It could lead to China having this jet and having this technology. It could also lead to Israel no longer being the big dog in the region, especially if this continues. And then you go and make a defense pact with Saudi Arabia on top of it. How do you think that makes Israel feel? What do you think Netanyahu's thinking about that? You take away our military edge, and you don't even press him about normalizing our relationship. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what can the lawmakers do about it? What can the Dems or the Republicans or anybody do about this sale? Well, lawmakers are allowed an opportunity to block these sales by law. You know, the way we do things in this country for now, lawmakers are supposed to be able to block sales. And a bipartisan effort like this would surely succeed, right? Well, they haven't had a lot of success. They tried this in 2019. In 2019, Trump okayed an $8.1 billion arms sale to Saudi Arabia, UAE, and a handful of other countries in the Middle East. He used the president's emergency powers to bypass Congress's review of the sale. And when there was a bipartisan resolution to block this sale on the back end, he vetoed it. You see the problem that arises when it's the president himself wheeling and dealing with his allies in the Middle East, business partners in the Middle East. And when I say business partners, I mean business partners, because they are business partners and have been for quite a while. They have been for quite a while. Now, there is going to be some pushback to this jet sale. There's going to be some pushback. Jim Risch of Idaho, he is the Senate Foreign Relations. He's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the committee that would review this. He's not going to back that. He's not going to back any bipartisan effort to block this sale. He's not going to back it. Other Republicans who fall in line time and time again, they're not going to back it either. So although, the Democrats and some Republicans are screaming about human rights violations and bombings in Yemen and all these other things, this will go through. There's not going to be anything to stop it. Don's talking about it like it's done because it is, regardless of what guardrails are supposed to be in place. This is a Trump presidency. You can throw traditional guardrails absolutely out the window. They just do not apply. They simply do not apply. And when I say that Trump is business partners with Saudi Arabia, that is exactly what I mean. Right now. DAR Global is a company that is an extension of Saudi Arabia's money. They have about $1 trillion to kick around through DAR Global. And DAR Global is in coordination with the Trump Organization to build and build and build in Saudi Arabia. Trump Tower is planned for Jeddah. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that city. Jeddah. 2 towers in Riyadh, have been disclosed. They've announced that in September, they announced that a Trump Plaza in Jeddah will be built. That's $1 billion project. Live Golf, we talked about the sports washing, right? Live Golf is holding events at Trump National Doral Golf Club right here in Miami. And of course, there's Kushner. We talked about Kushner's relationship with Saudi Arabia already. Just in September, Kushner's firm, company he owns, and the Saudi firm DAR Global, they announced that they are going to take They're going to a $55 billion deal to invest in electronic arts and make it private. $55 billion into electronic arts, EA Sports, Madden. $55 billion deal. Trump's son-in-law. Kushner, by the way, went on 60 Minutes with Steve Witkoff. That name sound familiar? It's the Witkoffs with the Trump family who are behind WLF. And it's the Witkoffs and the Trumps who cashed out when Binance financed a $2 billion deposit from Sheikh Tahnoon of the UAE because the Trump administration okayed chip sales to them. Remember that whole relationship? That was the Witkoffs and the Trumps. And now Kushner and Witkoff, they go on 60 Minutes and they defend the whole thing. They defend the whole thing. No conflict. He says what people call conflicts of interest, Steve and I call experience and trusted relationships that we have throughout the world. Not mentioning that it's your father-in-law who is president of the United States and greenlighting these deals with Saudi Arabia. And normalizing Saudi Arabia as a global power and somebody who should be welcomed in to foreign countries as a hailing hero of business and relationships, getting handshakes, jet flyovers, their flags flown throughout Washington, D.C. Not unusual or unethical at all. It's unbelievable. And by the way, all of these business dealings, all of these towers and projects and plazas that Trump is putting up in Saudi Arabia and Dar Global, they are paying the Trump family licensing fees to do all of this, to put Trump's name on it, right? Trump Tower, Trump Plaza. He gets licensing fees for that. Last year, he banked $21.9 million in licensing fees. That is the Saudi Arabian government-backed company, Dar Global, giving Trump himself, because yes, Trump himself, in his financial disclosure, showed that he gets a piece of that $21.9 million a year in licensing fees. Trump is getting paid right in his personal pocket. Deals he made with Saudi Arabia as the president. The emoluments clause is a joke. Trump is wiping his ass with it. It is a complete joke. It is hollow. It means nothing. The Hatch Act means nothing. In the face of this administration, these constitutional norms mean nothing. And there doesn't seem to be anybody who can stop him. Robert Weissman, he's the co-president of Public Citizen, which is a government ethics watchdog group, said, branding and licensing deals are a way for the Saudi government to make direct payments to the Trump family in exchange for no work or services provided. These arrangements are not just ethically bankrupt, they fundamentally compromise U.S. foreign policy. Put quite simply, you can't prove that Trump is approving this jet sale because Saudi Arabia is paying him. You can't prove it. But Saudi Arabia is paying him.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it all down.